So, roll call. We have here Graham Ball, Harriet Applegate, Jonathan Ciesla, Drew Herzig, Guy Thielen, Linda Striyevsky. We have absent Roland Anglin. It's likely that Craig Kluge's not going to get here because he's helping his dad get home from the hospital. And Lee is here from the law department. And I didn't hear anything from Stephanie, so hopefully she'll join us as well.
We have the Zoom link up or whatever.
It is up. No one's on it, so.
All right.
I have a question about the Zoom link. I noticed that it said 5:50 instead of 6 o'clock. We officially
started.
started.
Started early
Oh,
as soon as I get here.
oh, I see.
So it's open for people to join, I guess.
For people to join, okay, well, yeah.
Well, and you had
Nobody wants to wait around 10 minutes.
Well, it's, if people are at their desk and they want to sign in so they don't have drama. So the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes for February 7th, 10th, and 12th. I would like to amend the minutes to also add the approval of the January 25th minutes, but let's approve those three that were already listed. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Next item is to approve amend agenda. I wanted to suggest a few things to add to the agenda. The first one is the approval of January 24th minutes. Is everybody okay with adding that to the agenda?
Yes.
Can I have a motion for approval of the January 24th minutes?
So motioned.
Second?
Harriet seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. The second item I wanted to suggest we add to the agenda is continued review of the charter. I'm hoping we'll have time to do that. Any objection to adding that to the agenda?
New business B.
Sure.
I'll motion to add continue review of the charter.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then the third thing I had was on the last meeting, I watched the recording of the last meeting, and there was a request that we talk about comments that I sent out to emails from the public. So do we want to do that now? I don't think we have to talk a lot about it unless people have a lot of questions,
Sure,
but.
let's get it over with.
Yes, what I was trying to do was just be courteous to people who responded or sent us a message, especially if it was obviously outside the scope of our proceedings. But I thought it would be better to just tell them, thank you very much for your comment, but maybe you should talk to the mayor or the president of council instead of talking to us about it. And I just thought because, we've had several discussions about the importance of prompt responses that I would just send responses out without bothering people about it because there's not really anything to discuss about those. Otherwise, if somebody sent in a comment that was substantive, I would just thank them and tell them that the commission would consider it. Does anybody have a concern about that?
No, but didn't you say, Drew, that you wanted everything to go, all these responses to go to members of this committee?
Well, it would be nice rather than kind of having a stack of them to read through here because I don't have time to read through them here right now. So that'll be nice, but
Well, we're going to try to figure out a way to help you get access to the Dropbox.
Yeah.
And then
Were
you
you
can
able to
easily see them at your convenience in the Dropbox.
I got as far as typing in my email address and I made a typo and there's absolutely no one doing it now. So unless I set up a whole new email account with my wrong name, I can't undo it. So I went in and deleted that. I tried going in through Gmail. I got an account set up, but I don't have an invitation to join this group through Gmail. So I'm still shut out.
And I can do it, as long as you send me the email address, I can add you.
I did.
Okay.
Herzig@gmail.com. I sent it to you.
Okay. I can do that.
Yeah, I can write it down for you right now if you want. It's just my name again, but at Gmail rather than at Yahoo. Okay.
Okay,
Fine.
Cause I know that all the comments are there, but
Yeah,
you can't get in.
right.
then the final thing I had on the additions to the agenda is, I noticed that at the meeting last week, there was a visitor. And I wondered if we want to talk about how we want to handle comments from people who stop by. I don't want to discourage people from stopping by, but I think the idea of the public comments is that they make a comment. And if we want to allow back and forth with somebody who's speaking, I think the better thing is to have them come at another time when we can schedule, time on the agenda to have interchange, for lack of a better word. Hi, Stephanie. Hi. What do you all think about that?
Do you wanna add this to the agenda? You wanna talk about it now? I just wanna be clear.
We can add it to the agenda.
I mean, I'll move to add that to the agenda as item B and move the continued review down to C.
Okay. A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay. We don't have anybody here from the public today. So we're on to old business. I sent an email to Councilor Maddox, letting him know that we have had visits from the mayor and everybody else on council, reiterating that he's welcome to come and visit us and to send in his survey. But I told him that I wanted to respect his time and I wasn't gonna pester him. So if he wanted to get back in touch with us, he could, but I wasn't gonna bother him. Cause I don't wanna keep sending him emails every week. I don't think it's really productive and I wanna respect his time, so. I also followed up again with Mayor George in Lakewood. The dates of our March meetings don't work with her. I guess I would suggest that we just drop that. I don't know that there's really a whole lot to be gained by continuing to try to schedule an interview with her, but what do you all think?
Was there something specific we were looking to get from
No,
Lakewood?
just to hear from a few mayors, and we've heard from two. But does anybody want me to continue working on that?
No,
That's fine.
Okay. And are there any other interviews we want to schedule?
Well, I think both Mayor Wheelo and Davita Russell, and I guess maybe just those two recommended that we talk to, I guess one was one or more department heads, and I guess Wheelo, the president of city council. So I just wanna remind us of that, to see if we do wanna talk to, do either of those two things. Any department heads here or any members of city council, say like from, I think she suggested the president of South Euclid City Council. Is that right?
Yes, Councilwoman Russell floated Richmond Heights as a city of interest to me.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't, she didn't say that here though.
No.
She said, and I guess the other question is, since we've had so much discussion about department heads and their alleged unwillingness or inability to talk to council, does it make sense for us to talk to a department head here? Or I'm asking, I'm not proferring an opinion.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it feels almost to me like tipping into administration. At the same time, I know that they've been brought up, but I mean, it's really about the interaction between council having access to staff or that whole right of inquiry, that kind of discussion. Not so, I'm not sure if an administrative staff would have anything to add. But I mean, that's a question as well.
I think it could be relevant to talk to them because, I mean, we're talking a lot about them and kind of presuming what they think in certain situations about engaging with council and engaging with the mayor, and I feel like we've kind of formed an opinion of what the department heads are thinking, but it feels a little bit like hearsay. If we're going to be taking that into account for a right of inquiry section.
I think it might be beneficial if there is a director who's been there under the previous form of government as well as this form of government. It might be, if we had an opportunity to talk to someone like that, we might be able to get more information about what worked, what didn't work, why, how, you know.
Yeah, I don't feel like we necessarily need to talk to like every department.
No, I agree
Right.
totally, no. In fact, I think the number of department heads who have been with longevity is probably small in number from
Yeah.
Gene Gordon's recent posting
Yeah, I'm
to
not
Nextdoor.
I'm not sure who
I don't know if there's anybody.
is a carryover. Do you have any idea, Lee?
Director Clinkscale
Clinkscale.
would be,
What's the role, please? His role? Or her role?
Or-
hers is, she's director of Public Works.
Public Works, okay.
I believe Eric Sanf was a director before, planning.
How about Alan Butler? Is he a department head?
And Alan Butler. would be
Alan
in
Butler.
And what
Who's he
department is it?
the Housing
Housing.
Department.
Housing, okay. Okay, so there's a couple there.
I think there's more than that, aren't there? I don't know.
It's not, I mean, if we wanna do it.
So I guess I feel like by requesting their attendance is putting them in a poor position because it's a public meeting, it's recorded. One, can they be honest? And two, this is actually their livelihood and job. It's not a political discussion, you know? So that's my concern. But I didn't think of that until you were talking. I'm like, yes, we presume, but at the same time, how much are you gonna get?
Right.
Because they can be fired, we can't, you know?
True. That's a good point. I
Yeah,
didn't think
that
about
is a good point.
And just requesting it could be just awkward. They also have the right to just not respond. I mean, you know.
Yeah, I think, I agree with that. I think that's unfortunate because so much of our discussions have been, you know, one group says this about the directors and another group says this about the directors. And it would be, you know, I mean, I agree with you and I think that is probably more important, you know, their job security is more important, you know, in the long run than our need to hear them. But I just want to reflect that it's unfortunate because a lot of what we've been, you know, wrestling with is in terms of what really is the case revolves around what directors can and can't, will and won't do. So
Yeah.
anyway, I just want to reflect that's I basically don't want to put their jobs at risk.
Yeah.
That's more important, but I do think it's unfortunate because it would be good for us to know what the truth is or what approximates.
The mayor did invite us to invite them.
Yeah, he did.
You could put up a screen and electronically alter it. What if we communicated with the mayor saying we would like to invite any department head who would like to speak with us? So leave it up to their sense of whether it be safe or worthwhile or not kind of thing. I don't want to slow the process up, but maybe saying we would like to issue a general invitation to any department head who would like to address the Charter Review Commission and see what happens.
I also agree. I hear where you're coming from. I hear where everyone's coming from. And I think they're all really valid points. And then at the same time, I'm like, well, it's kind of on us to like use our best objective judgment, even though we're going off of things that we've heard, but there's still opinions. And I think it's up to us, like as this commission, to make these kinds of decisions, in that we're like choosing careful language in the charter that will help reflect the needs of both sides.
And you know, it just made me think about, I'm curious, what I would propose is to put a pin in this discussion until when we talk about the work plan, because I think it's gonna wrap up into it and try to say, yes, we will or won't, because maybe there's room, maybe there's not, but I mean, we do have to give consideration to time available.
Yeah.
And would you guys like to just revisit it in a little bit?
I'm fine with that.
Is everybody okay with that? Okay, so the next item under old business is further discussion on the February 12th public meeting. I did watch the recording of last week's meeting, so I heard the comments that everybody else made, and I don't want to repeat what other people said because I agreed with a lot of what was said. I was sorry that we didn't have a sign-in sheet And I started one, I don't know if that got printed out. Did you print that, Lee?
No, I don't think I've
Did I send that to you? Well, I have,
all of it.
I have a sign-in sheet and I will circulate that around to everybody. And if you can remember who was there, I think it'd be nice to have some idea of who was in attendance. And I can send that around to everybody and we can talk about that at our next meeting. But otherwise, I think, anything I would say is repeating what other people have said. But I do commend to you, if you haven't already looked at them, to look at the transcript that's typed up and is in the Dropbox. It's helpful to see. So that's all I have to say on that. And thank you again to Lee and to Steve Barker for helping us with. So the next item on the agenda is new business. And under new business, the first item is discussing the current project plan and our process going forward. So I want to suggest that first we review process. So at this point, I think there's two elements in our process. One of them is how we're gonna proceed with reviewing the charter, to finish up our review of the charter. And the second one is what is our final work product gonna look like? Because I think both of those were touched upon in the discussion last week. So the document that's on the screen, the red line draft amended charter, that's the current charter, which includes the changes that were made to implement an elected mayor, plus any additional charter changes since the elected mayor changes. Plus, it has the changes that the 2019 commission recommended that we have said we liked. So that's what I thought we were gonna work from as we continue to review the charter.
So
Does
just to be
anybody have a
clear,
different understanding?
that's everything, every possible change that we have discussed or somebody else has discussed so far, is that what this is?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so it's absolutely current, plus anything that was decided or discussed with the comments for the 2019, like we like that language, just keep it, that stuff.
If we didn't like it, it's not there,
Exactly.
just what we liked.
And there might be a placeholder to where there's a comment like, oh, we should talk about this, and then that's it, because we haven't talked about it yet. But that would be the most modern charter with our comments from 2019.
And who made that compilation?
Lee put it
Lee
together.
did, thank you, Lee.
And is
Thank you, that is a tremendous amount of work.
Is that this or is this something else, this thing we got?
Yeah, I thought we were
That's
gonna,
an excerpt from it that shows edits that I made and distributed for us to talk about when we get to that
So
section.
this is not in there.
your email said the whole thing would be in here.
I think it is in there.
No, well,
Your revisions are not in that draft.
because we haven't,
We haven't discussed it.
exactly. And I
They're in
think
front of you.
for process, I would like to say that whatever working document we agree upon, that no changes are made to that without the whole group approving them, if that's okay. I mean,
Okay.
by a majority, if not unanimity.
Why would we do it any other way?
I just want to make sure that that's our process. Again, this is not, again, that's a process question, that as we make the changes, they are made by the group by a vote of the majority.
That actually brings up an interesting process question too of, God, I can't remember how many pages this is. It's 45 pages. And because it's got all the edits and the ins and the outs, that kind of thing, printing it off every single time seems a bit excessive. And I don't know what a middle ground is. But, if we if we can look at this, but if anyone needs printing time, I'm not quite sure how to do that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Just because it's gonna change,
Yes.
after we do it and we're not gonna so it's just something to think about that.
Well, what I would suggest is that when we, as part of the process, when we decide what portions we are going to visit at the next meeting, well, let me put that way, that just those sections get printed out. Or, if we revise a section, that gets printed out. If something comes up that we haven't all discussed, not the whole thing, just section by section as we are going into discussion with maybe Linda's proposed changes or somebody So we get printouts of the section under discussion with the proposed changes. And that, so we don't have to have the whole document every time. And then as we discuss and approve whatever changes have been suggested, those get added and that sort of thing. So does that make sense, that we get the section under discussion and not the whole thing?
So just to ask a question, Lee, so does this document on the screen include the vacancy language that I think was agreed upon?
Yes, so
Okay.
you approved it at the last meeting.
Okay,
So it's completely up to date, up to this moment.
I believe so.
That's great. How long did that take you? Days?
2 days.
Wow.
Thank you.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Either,
No, that isn't corrected.
yes it is,
Has a colon after of, and then
Yeah.
either.
and then either.
Oh, I couldn't see it, I'm sorry.
so
Blue isn't as good as red.
Yeah, it was red on my computer downstairs. I don't know why it's blue here.
Yeah, we might be able to.
Can you make it blue?
Maybe.
I mean, red? Red.
Yeah, so.
in terms of the work product, then I thought what we were working towards at the end of the day is a report that will be accompanied by our recommendations for changes to the charter, all of which will go to council and be available to the public. And then as to how we present the charter changes, we have talked about two different approaches, one of which is a total amended and restated charter, and the other is buckets.
Buckets plus a
If we
amended
did
charter?
buckets, we still probably would want to do a total amended and restated compiled document because it's important for drafting purposes to do that as a check, to be sure that everything hangs together and is consistent, et cetera. But we talked about the pros and cons of doing a total amended and restated as opposed to buckets. And we haven't made a decision on that because we were waiting to see where we came out on changes. So that's where I think we are on agreement on our work product.
So, okay, just to repeat that back, it's the concept of total amended, buckets, or both.
I think at the end of the day, you've got two different issues. One of them is what do you present? So if we present buckets, and I think buckets are very helpful to allow people to focus on a particular subset of issues. Even if you present buckets and we decide we want to recommend that council approach it with buckets, we still are going to want to have a compiled document to show how all the buckets fit into the whole document.
And to avoid what happened with like some of the mayoral replacement where they, it's woven through.
Yes, right.
Got it.
So it's kind of a bigger issue to decide whether strategically it's better to ask the public to approve a total amended document versus asking the public to approve whatever buckets council agrees they want to present.
And those are two.
We haven't gotten to that point.
Those are two different issues. One is what do we give to the council? The other is what does the council decide to put on the ballot? And I believe for the ballot thing, it has to be bucket, for use of a better term. You know, it's like, shall the charter reflect these language changes, update, you know what I mean? Because just like the University Heights, when they put it on the ballot, it had to be broken up into sections.
It doesn't have to be.
Yes.
It's a strategic decision as to whether it's advisable to give it to them as one whole amended document, or is it better to give people buckets and some buckets may be approved and some buckets won't be. If you give them one big document, you run the risk that somebody's gonna be upset about something on page 3, stop reading and vote no.
Do we make those recommendations to council and then they decide if they like that setup and then they send it to the voters? 'Cause
Yes,
like,
they have the
and-
final decision.
Okay, so
We could recommend.
we can recommend it, but at the end of the day, they decide what goes to the voters. So like what we really need to focus on is how we want to present it to council, correct?
Right, but I think I think we do need to discuss a little bit how we would like, as how we recommend to the council how it gets presented. In other words,
Is that part of the report too, or is the
yeah,
report
I think we could just
separate?
say that in the report,
Well, the report would cover that. I mean, in my mind, the report would basically say, here was our job, this is what you asked us to do. Here's what we did as a group, what was our process, and here's what we suggest, and here's why. With attachments that would include a total amended and restated document plus buckets, assuming that we recommend buckets, it would include buckets. And we put that in front of council, and we could also include in the report any recommendations that we come to as a group as to timing. You know, should you try to do it this year, should you try to do it next year? But it's all gonna be up to council, we can't control what they decide.
But we still can recommend to them.
Yes, absolutely.
Is it,
Which city was it that wagered all on one roll of the dice, put the whole charter up?
Lakewood,
It was Lakewood.
and it passed.
But they also told us that they did a lot of public education before they got it out on the ballot. Remember, I forget
That,
if
it
it was
would be too
like
nice
a
to
year
talk to
or
the
something
mayor.
like that, yeah.
They sent a copy to every resident.
They did.
Yes, yeah, they
Right.
spent
Well,
quite
you
a
would
bit.
have to do that.
Yeah, you would have to do
I
that.
mean, that's part of our
Yes, to vote
process.
on
I mean,
If you wanted to pass.
well, yeah, I think you.
Well, yeah, and that's, you here is city council.
so is it possible to consider like, okay, this is one option, like in recommending this to council, like there's the total amended option or these buckets. And this is, you can do either one,
Right.
this is, so we are gonna essentially do both then.
Well, yeah, you have to.
So
Well, we're
So
not
then
assuming
that's-
anything at this point because we haven't decided
Well,
yet.
I would say that to do a good job of drafting the buckets, it is necessary to put the whole thing together to be sure you haven't screwed it up when you were doing the buckets.
But I guess we haven't, I mean, I guess what you're getting at is we haven't definitively decided about the buckets. Maybe we should
Well,
just,
that's
well,
what my question,
yeah,
that's what I was
yeah.
asking.
I don't think we
Okay,
have.
But the other thing is we haven't decided whether we were gonna do a complete written revision because some people have said, no, that's not our job. But I feel, as I stated last time, and I agree with Linda, that it has to be part of our presentation to the council. It's like, here's how it all works if you throw in every bucket we're handing you.
I think maybe what you're remembering is a comment that Craig made about going through the entire rest of the charter line by line. And there may be some things in the charter that we decide we don't really need to do anything with that. Like the thing about the court, we don't have anything to say about that. So, I mean, you know, it's a half a page in the document, it's like there's nothing there to talk about. So I don't think that Craig was saying we shouldn't put together a complete amended and restated document. I think he was just commenting on how much attention we have to pay to certain parts of it, whereas other parts of it require a lot of attention. But I don't wanna speak for him, he's not here, so.
I think what I hear from all of those different comments and opinions is that technically someone needs to lay eyes on it so that we have at least, we know that, oh, we've read it, we don't need to change that section, we're good. So even though we don't necessarily have to maybe read through it line by line here and make all these changes or whatever, we all can at least say like, we know what's in there, we're good with it, there's no changes recommended for this, and it just goes into the overall charter. Correct?
which is what this document is, right? I mean, it's stuff
Yeah, I mean,
basically, yeah,
yeah, basically it just, would be
up to
the,
this.
Yeah, but I would tell you that right now, the document, you know, when I was looking at it today, when I was reviewing things and when I was making those edits to those few sections, there's some typos in it. I mean, I'm gonna read the whole damn thing.
Yeah,
You don't all have to read it all, but I'm gonna read it all.
Yes.
And a couple people really need to read it all so that you know,
Yeah,
you
I'd
catch
say at
things,
least
different
two
people
we
catch
all
things.
yeah, I saw some of your typos today.
Oh, you must be the second reader
There you
then.
go.
There you go, yeah.
Aren't you an English major?
so just to mark it, we are agreeing that by whatever process, we will present a thoroughly revised text as part of our presentation to the council. Is that correct?
I think the way I would state it is, we are going to present a complete charter that has incorporated into it all of the changes we recommend. Yes,
And at some future point, or perhaps now, we'll throw in the buckets idea. We don't have to do that today,
But I'm
but
just
we've
trying
been talking as if
Yes, I'm
the
just
buckets.
trying to get one chunk decided at a time. So do we need a vote on that? Because I really think this is important because we've never actually said up to this point what we want to, what our end product is. So one part of our end product is what Linda just stated. Do we need to vote or can we just all agree on that?
We can vote on that. I
I mean,
move
you know how I feel
that,
about that.
I move that we present a copy of the proposed charter that incorporates all of the changes that we ultimately recommend. That's my motion.
I'll second that.
In the discussion, I just wanna make clear, that doesn't mean that's all we're doing. This-
Right.
I can.
Just
That does
one
not
part.
mean that's
Okay,
all we're
I just
doing.
wanna be
Part
clear,
of this,
just wanna make it
yeah.
clear.
No, there's like a beacon at the end of the tunnel to aim for.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Do
we
wanna
made a
talk about
decision.
that now?
All those people that aren't here are probably gonna be no votes, no, just kidding.
Well, and I was looking at the project plan, phase 3 is when that would have to happen. Or because it needs to be done by phase 4.
So why don't we turn to the work plan and walk through this.
I'm like obsessing my time because I'm starting to look at this and I think you mentioned Linda in one of the emails. It might have to be a couple extra meetings, but it's I
Yeah.
want to be done by May 31st.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, so you all have the work plan number 3. So we had said at the beginning, when we first started this process, that we wanted to be done by May 31st. And I still have that as my goal. I hope you all share that. We wanna try to finish by May 31st. We don't wanna get an extension. We wanna get it done. And if we decide we wanna get it done by May 31st, I would say we probably will need some additional meetings. I'm not saying like 20 additional meetings, but we're gonna need some additional meetings, I think, because meeting twice a month for March and April isn't gonna get us there. But we need to plan for doing some additional meetings, and we're gonna have to plan, at least to some extent, people are gonna have to do some work outside of the meetings, whether it's reviewing drafts or preparing drafts for other people to review, et cetera. So there will be some homework, no written exam, but homework. Does that sound reasonable? And we can go through this and then we can talk a little bit about whether we wanna try to schedule some extra meetings now to get them on people's calendars.
And this is why I want to put a pin in the director discussion because I haven't looked at the reality fully, so I'm just keeping in mind as we go through and going, oh, okay.
So we'll talk a little bit about big picture as to what we have to do between now and May 31st.
Oh, and one, I'm just gonna interrupt you. Is this close to what you were talking about last meeting? The
process.
that we're on a we're on a process together?
I think so. I mean, I get that this work plan is more of like meeting dates. I think my point was that we didn't even know what document we were working from, and therefore we need like an actual workflow process. Like, of course, we wanna meet markers along the way, cause I'm going for the end of May, so but to me, like, we need to move these meetings in a way that is fluid and has a process that we've all like talked about and agreed upon. And so that was more,
Yeah, that's kind of what the agenda is supposed to do.
I understand it's intended to, I just don't know that we, like, when we get to the actual reviewing of the charter,
Yeah, that's when
That's
the
when I
process
think-
breaks down.
yeah, and that's not necessarily part of the agenda that, I mean, it's on the agenda, but the process for reviewing the charter is where we don't necessarily have like we just figured out today what this document is, and that's because Lee spent 2 days putting it together, you know what I mean? Like last meeting, we were like, well, think we're working from this one,
Yeah.
this one's called, like that,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, but we're past that.
That felt dismissive.
No, I think we're past it because
I'm just gonna halt for a
we've
second.
agreed on the document, and we've agreed on the document that we're gonna use as our working document. We've agreed on a process for only adding to it when we've reached consensus. So I think we've gotten over a barrier.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to be dismissive, but I think
Oh,
we
I know you're not
have
trying to, but
established
that's
the
what it
document.
felt like, so.
What's funny is I took the opposite. I thought it was like, okay, we won't talk about the bad stuff. It's all like, we'll go forward positively. So it's just so funny, such a
Right.
different, anyway.
And I don't think I'm trying to focus on bad things. It's just like if we don't work from, yeah.
Well, and I was thinking when Drew was talking that the idea that for like the printing and stuff, that might be then kind of like we did last where you had the vacancy language and with like the language chunks are on the agenda now. So you know what you're walking into.
Yeah.
It helped with the printing and it might help with the flow.
Yeah, I
But that
personally
was-
have just felt like confused half the time.
Yeah, well, we were very confused last week.
Well, and then so to pin that down, I would like to say, so that the email we got, Linda proposed, she's looking at some revisions that she thinks would work for appointments and powers and that sort of thing. I would like to say the process would be that that's one of our agenda items next meeting is to look through those changes. We'll have printouts available, we don't have them tonight, and talk about that. If something else comes up now, okay, so that's how I would like to see it. It's like we say we're gonna look at X, Y, and Z sections, here's some proposed changes, or we don't have proposed changes, but we need to look at these anyhow kind of thing. And then that is our process, we say, and we move gradually through it. And it doesn't have to be linear, it can be, I grabbed this section because it's, one of our big concerns, and here's some proposed changes. Does that make sense? And I think again, we're not past this because we don't say, what is gonna be in front of us at our next meeting?
Yeah, and to speak to Stephanie's point, I mean, I think having this stone, this rock on the screen is helpful to us because I know what I spend a lot of time in meetings is messing around through my papers of which is which, what and then I feel bad that I don't want to rely on that. I want to find my papers with my notes and that process of messing through your papers at meetings is
Destabilizing?
destabilizing for us for me individually. And I don't want to rely on this, but if I know that this is the document, then I don't have to just physically and psychically be messing with papers, and the destabilizing effect that has on a person.
So that's two parts of our process. One is that we will discuss at meetings certain, specific sections of the charter with proposed revisions or just needing revision kind of thing, or just needing us to go through it. And that what we decide at the meeting by a majority vote will be recorded by Lee so that at our next meeting it will be there and established. And maybe sounds pedestrian to people, but I really want to get this kind of decided so that we know that this is how we operate.
It puts a lot on Lee.
Yes, that's right.
Well-
Yeah, but on the other
Well,
hand.
I will comment that we did, we went through the 2019 document with the suggested changes. And we went through it section by section by section over a series of meetings, and we got through it. With our comments and things we liked, things we didn't like. We're in the process of doing the same thing with the current charter. So we're reviewing it, which is what I think we all want to do. We want to go through the current charter in light of what we've already said we like, and then to see if there's other things we want to change, things that we haven't already discussed, et cetera. So, that's been our process. Now, we can more precisely say that at today's meeting, we're gonna go through this much. Maybe we'll accomplish it, maybe we won't. But I will tell you that in my experience in going through documents in a group and reviewing documents for changes, the more productive way for us to really accomplish this is going to be to have a longer meeting where we go through the document and try to finish it up. Because it's hard to predict for any given meeting how much we're going to be able to accomplish. But if you look at the number of meetings we have left, we have 4. in March and April, 4 meetings. So it's hard for me to map out how we think in 4 meetings we're gonna cover everything we need to cover.
One thing, what you mentioned is we found out last meeting, we did not have any record of the changes we had discussed to the current charter. There was no record,
But-
that's what Lee is concerned.
No, he found it.
He found it,
During
it's
the
like,
comments, they weren't incorporated in the draft yet, now they're incorporated in this draft.
that's what I'm saying. And again, we have comments in our review of the 2019 proposed thing that are still just comments asking for clarifications, this or that. So I can't say we've completed that because there are still flags that were pins or whatever you want to call them that we put into that saying, we need to find out more about this sort of thing. So we've still got a lot of plates spinning kind of thing. But again, until last week, we did not know whether we had a record of the changes we had discussed making. Now we know we do, and we know where it is. And that's an advance, it is. I also want to suggest, I mentioned this before, but I think our 4 remaining or whatever regular meetings, that we use the bulk of that time in our review process, because for the people who signed on at the start and said 2 meetings per month, that's I can manage kind of thing. Extra meetings, if we have visitors, if we have this or that, I would like to say extra meetings will be used for sort of extracurricular activities or that sort of thing, so that the people, everyone feels that they can keep their commitment to 2 meetings a month and still be part of the main work of this commission.
What do you consider to be extracurricular?
Well, if we have a visit from a mayor or a department head or this or that sort of thing, anything that is not strictly looking at charter text and making, suggestions, revisions, review.
Sorry.
But if any of those come up, that those are scheduled not at our regular meetings. And again, my point is so that the people who committed to the regular meetings still feel that they are part of our major work. Plus the fact that being physically present is the only way you can vote on these things. So if somebody's just here for an interview, then tuning in, via remote kind of thing, it works fine because we're not going to be voting on stuff. But
Well, I would agree with you with regarding department heads or mayors or whoever else we may have, who we may want to pick their brain. But I think there's two other things that are, I think, pretty central to our discussions, and one is whether or not we're going to be proposing a hybrid, districts at large, or even for that matter, all districts, and or ranked choice voting. Those things are pretty germane to the work that we have been working on and talking about. So I think that isn't included in the line by line, review of the charter. So I think we do want to, somehow incorporate that. Now, that doesn't have to be a lot of work, because we can bring whole bodies of language into it that we don't have to write. But it's probably more work for leaders.
That's okay. Let me agree with you and kind of refine my statement a bit by saying, in that process of going through it, we've all got the buckets handy, because when we're going through and say, okay, this is an updated language change, this is gender neutral change, this is changing some of the numbers. So we are reviewing it consciously, saying these are and Linda has some suggestions on maybe, modifying the buckets, but these are the areas of concern that we want to incorporate, or that sort of thing, including ranked choice voting and what sort of council we have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any comments on this?
I just find it very frustrating that there was so many extra meetings and time spent on interviews. And now we're being told that we're gonna have to probably have extra meetings to meet this deadline. I'm just really frustrated by that. And I'm gonna take a walk because I feel like I was very disrespected. And I just need to I'm not trying to be dramatic, I'm just gonna take a walk.
We'll just take a break.
That's fine.
You can take a 5-minute break.
That was an honor. All right, we agreed to.
Oh, the red is on
that we
there.
can take a break.
Oh, we switched.
Yeah, I switched it over. Yep.
Yeah, slide it down.
About that. maybe I can ask you the question. that I
Yeah,
wanted to ask you. So I was
Are
having
we
a
on,
discussion with a
are we on
friend,
break?
Yes.
We're on break.
and regarding the ceasefire.
Yes.
And this is ironic, but she said, I really think it was, she made some really disparaging comments. It turned out that you're wearing the Palestinian scarf.
Harriet, let me suggest you guys might wanna go out, cause the recording is on.
Right.
You might wanna have a private conversation.
It's a break, but it's still. being-
Oh, hey, yeah, I do not want this.
You wanna have a private conversation, you might wanna go.
Yeah. Is the mic that good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's usually one of the frustrating things about online meetings is if there's someone in the room, you can't just quietly ask them something because then
Mhm.
it picked up and it's like, no, I literally just had to ask him like a 2-second and it picks up everything, just
Yeah.
like get interrupted, it's so
Yeah.
weird. What are our minutes, that. Is that in here?
It was really great. See, there's glaciers, many glaciers still there.
Wow.
We had great
Oh
weather.
God, look at that. It's like Lord of the Rings country,
Yeah,
isn't
they almost filmed it there.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, and then New Zealand upped the ante by offering them more money. But we had great weather. We were so
Wow.
fortunate. Clear skies, and for 3 days it was 60 degrees and sunny,
Whoa.
which isn't as, you don't usually have weather
Yeah,
that good
yeah.
at that particular place. So here's my penguins.
Oh,
They are awfully
they-
cute.
They Make burrows in the ground?
Yes,
Wow.
this particular kind does.
Wow.
They make a burrow and that's where they lay the eggs.
What type is that?
Magellan.
Oh, okay.
They
They
are
always
awfully cute though.
sound more from, look at all that.
That's all,
That
that's all
fluff,
fluff
yeah,
from-
for fledglings like?
yeah, so the juveniles have kind of gray fuzz all over them,
Uh-huh.
but they have to molt it
Oh,
off.
look at the ship in the background, the cruise ship and the penguin, that's hilarious.
But they're awfully cute, I
Yeah,
think. There's something
Yeah.
about penguins and llamas that I find,
well,
Kinda cute.
being sort of bipedal in a almost human way.
yeah.
Well, it's good that you get to see the glaciers before they're all gone, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's true.
Maybe when I get home, I'll check my email and see if it got through.
You know, while we're sitting here, let me see if I can do something. I know my internet doesn't work great.
I feel we must be, there's some sort of
I feel
personal
about penguins.
vortex here that's not.
Koala bears and penguins have a place in many people's hearts.
But I am so there's no stop.
Let me see if Harriet and Heather come back in now.
Thank you. But that wasn't on the recording. First sentence.
So Stephanie, I appreciate your concern. I think the interviews were something we all agreed to. And there's really no, if you're going to talk to people, there's really no way to compress that.
Yeah, I think I had stated that I thought the written interviews were enough, but that's fine. It's not worth rehashing the past, but it is very frustrating that it's now impacting our future process and getting done by the deadline, so.
Well, and I appreciate if you didn't anticipate that we were gonna have to have some extra meetings in order to get the work done. I guess I saw that coming.
I'm not saying that from a general standpoint, you mean from this point on? Or throughout the entire process? Because, okay, that's one thing, but I also think 2 meetings a week or month, and then if we had a process from the beginning, things would have gotten done.
Well, I don't agree that we didn't have a process.
Okay.
But let's try to move forward and try to get done what we have on our agenda for tonight.
Maybe what we could do is forget about the George interview and and the other 2 interviews. That might, those things might be nice, but I wasn't thinking at the time that 4 meetings sounds like hardly any, We've had the 4 meetings in the last,
Well, I thought we had decided we were gonna pursue the George interview.
I guess, oh, did we? Okay. And so we could probably decide to take that pin out and just not do those other interviews.
What I was suggesting is if we want to do any further interviews, make them the extra scheduled meeting.
Yeah,
So that the meetings we committed to when we started this are the meetings where we're still doing
Yeah.
the work.
Do we still have to have a quorum at those meetings though?
but we might have to have extra,
So we still have to have a quorum at interviews.
but we might have to have extra meetings anyway, even if we
Yeah.
drop those. That's the
Yes,
problem.
yeah.
I mean, that's
But just-
that's what.
Just as we're scheduling out, then we want to schedule if it's visitors of any kind, I think those would be over and above our
Right.
regular scheduled meetings.
So one of my curiosities around this and being efficient is like large new sections, the wards or the ranked choice voting. What if people brought that language forward?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to like draft it here? Or if there's sections, so like Linda did with vacancies as well as today with, I can't remember what, but it was something, what was it today? The right of inquiry stuff. I just don't know what that looks like, and I was looking at the buckets, like maybe next meeting we say, I don't know, I don't think we need to talk about gender neutral language. Do we have to vote on whether or not we pursue ranked choice voting or wards? Cause that's also a discussion we've never had.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, so one of the things that I have on my notes to talk about in the work plan is things like that. So let me suggest that we take a few minutes and high level, look at the work plan, because that's gonna bring up some of these issues. I wanna say that I think the good news is that as far as data gathering is concerned, we've pretty much completed all of that. We do have some outstanding questions that we posed to the law department and the facilitator. And by our next meeting, I asked Lee if we could please have feedback on all those outstanding questions so we can, check that off. Then,
Well, actually, Linda, do we know, are we waiting on anything from the facilitator?
I don't think we are waiting on
Okay.
anything from the facilitator. But Graham, I think you had a master list at one point, didn't you, of the questions that we put to the law department and the facilitator?
Yes, I think they've all been answered, although I don't know if we've gone over them here. So
Well, I think there were a couple things that Lee was still waiting to get sign off from the law director on. So I know there were a few
We don't
things.
have answers yet for most of them.
oh, okay.
Maybe one or two.
I see. Good to know. Okay, then maybe that is something that we should, do we want to elevate those questions to the facilitator? Or would those be more
Could the
law
facilitator
department
answer them?
questions?
The facilitator just seems to keep throwing it back to, well, it could be this or it could be that. I mean, he's not given us any, he's given us very few specifics saying this would be what I suggest. It's usually, these are your options. I don't find it very helpful. I don't find it very facilitating, actually.
Well, actually, I think that if we were to pose a policy question to the law department, we probably would get the same kind of response. That, here's some options you could consider, because they're not really here to tell us what to do. They're to try to answer our questions and provide some guidance if we have questions on what do people generally do, or what's kind of a normal position versus more of an outlier position. That's the kind of guidance that I find helpful, but.
Well, depending on the nature of the questions.
That's what, I think we need to see the questions again, because maybe they are, is this legal? That sort of a question,
There are some that are like that, yeah. So
How long is the list?
that was pretty long.
Did you email it around?
No, so I can definitely do that.
Okay.
I think it's been
you did
distributed
at
at some
one
point,
point. I think
maybe,
it
but
was.
it also may have been adjusted
Come on,
since then, so.
Thank
Why
you.
don't you recirculate that, and maybe you could consult with Lee ahead of time to see which things have already been done, and we could.
I can circulate what I have minus the answers until they're approved by the law director.
That's
So
great,
just the questions.
yeah.
I mean, as a practical matter, if the questions are such that the generic law director, not knowing Cleveland Heights, could answer them, it might be better because we can direct, the law department is loaded down with other stuff to do and they're gonna be structurally slow. So if the facilitator could answer them more quickly then.
With yes or no answers, sort of.
Yeah, well, I guess that's why we have to look at the
Yeah.
questions.
I mean, that to me is, we need to find out which of the questions that we just need yes or no, is this legal or is this permitted, that sort of thing.
Right.
And then the other questions may be, again, something that we'll have to decide, but we don't know until we the questions again.
Right now, my list has like at least 17 questions on it.
A lot of, are they yes or no in general?
Some of them are yes or no.
Multiple choice, essay?
Some of them are more extended response, so.
How, for process, how can we go about separating those and deciding if there's not the yes or no questions, will we get a faster response from the law department here or from our facilitator?
Lee, is it the case, do you know, that you have looked at all those questions?
Yes, I
And
have
you have draft answers for all of them?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a question of Lee talking to Director Hannah and telling Director Hannah the commission respectfully requests that we have all answers by our next meeting,
Yeah,
so we can move on.
I've done that.
all right, good luck. I hope that doesn't put your job in jeopardy. So by next meeting, presumably, we will have answers from the head law person here.
And we will have been able to see you will have recirculated those questions.
I will do it, cause there
Okay.
are more questions on here.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so you kind of have his list in yours?
Yes.
Right,
Okay, thank you.
That's helpful. Okay, so the next phase here,
What phase are we at?
we're in phase 2.
Wait, phase two?
Yeah, see?
How about phase one?
Uh-huh.
We did just conclude that March 20 meeting comment there at the end of phase one, so yeah, phase two.
So in phase two, this is where we complete our discussion and vote on major items. And then there's a separate item for additional items. So my concept, subject to your consideration, is to say, do we want to vote in principle on certain things? And some of these are in their own buckets. Most of them are in their own buckets. But do we want to vote on some of these major items to decide we have consensus that we want to propose something on them or we don't? And if there's consensus that we do want to propose something on them, then we can start talking about who's going to take on the job of coming up with a draft. So, we've had some discussions on various of these items in the major categories. And what I have in here is just possible examples. This isn't definitive. This is just my spitballing of what I think are kind of major decisions. But if we want to take a vote on these and then decide we want to address it or we don't want to address it. And if we think we do want to propose something on it, then get somebody started on doing language. And then the second category is the other stuff that is not as, I would say, maybe debatable. Because we've already kind of decided in the process of going to the 2019 proposals from the prior Charter Review Commission that we do want to propose the gender neutral language. We do want to propose maybe not everything, but a lot of the updating language that they suggested. We do want to update the referendum recall initiative stuff. So, that one's a little bit easier.
So you're
But-
talking 3A now or 2A?
I'm looking at 2A and then the corollary of it is 3A. So I think we've gotten further along on the 3A stuff because that's easier. And we haven't really come to votes or made decisions on the 2A thing. So Jonathan, this gets into the point that you just raised a few minutes ago. If you take something like changing the way we elect city council or adopting ranked choice voting, do we have consensus that we want to bring those things forward or not? Because if we don't, there's no need to draft them. If we do, then somebody who's really excited about that maybe should start drafting.
I'd
So
like to
what do you all think?
I'd like to mention that the non-discrimination policy doesn't appear here, and I want to make sure that we are keeping that in mind.
This is not intended to be exhaustive.
I
It's
know,
just
but
examples.
I understand that, but it's like we tend to get kind of locked into what's in front of us, and I just want to keep pushing that forward.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so
I'm not sure where it's at, but I do believe that sooner rather than later, we should bring up the major issues like the how people are elected, ranked choice voting, and those other things, because we need to decide if we believe at this point in time, from our commission's point of view, we can be effective. And if we can, as you say, Linda, we need to, somebody has to take an interest in it, somebody has to move forward with it, so. But some of those things can fall off the list if we agree that as much as it might be nice, as much as we'd like to have it, it's not gonna work this time. So we should it just gives us less to be concerned about, allowing us to focus on things which we believe we can carry across the goal line.
except that's, I don't think that's quite a fair characterization. Some of us might think that those are more important than.
Oh, I
sure.
agree, no, I
Fine.
agree, but I'm sorry,
But that's a way, that's the point of the discussion, to decide what we think, what do we think we want to prioritize for purposes of finishing our work and bringing things to city council.
And I think it's also a question of how much language will be needed for any specific
Right.
proposal or bucket. For instance, I looked, and I know that Lee feels he needs to kind of recuse himself, but at University Heights, their ranked choice voting description goes on for a number of pages. It's very detailed. And I don't know how much we can just take that and revise it for Cleveland Heights, but that So that's a big chunk of language. Now, if we go for a hybrid ward and at-large system, do we just say the council shall elect 4 ward councilors and 3 at-large councilors, or do we need to go into more language? So I would need more clarity on how much language we need to put behind these proposals so we'll know what our task might be. Because I agree, I think most of us want to make suggestions along for these issues kind of thing, but how much language do we need to give the council?
Well, at the very minimum, we could just say, we recommend a
Yes,
hybrid system which
Right.
would involve 4 at large and 3, 4
4 wards and 3 at
four
large.
wards and
yeah,
3 at
yeah,
large.
yeah.
And alternatively, we recommend the city adopt ranked choice voting. That's the
Correct.
minimum.
Yes.
That's the
yes,
minimum. I mean, we could actually do that
Yes.
and
yeah,
leave it to them to,
And that's
do the
our,
enabling.
that's our sort of like low bar.
Right, that would be the low bar, but if
Yeah.
we're scrambling at the end,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
we
yeah.
could do that, you know?
The drawback on that is the less definition we give,
Right.
the less
The less
convincing
chance.
it will be, yeah.
Right, there is a drawback to
Yeah.
that, right.
So that's phase 2 still, and we're still pretty much in phase 2 as far as.
2A is a big one.
Yeah. And I don't know with Roland and Greg absent, if, how much we, whether we're calling them buckets or issues or concerns or whatever kind of thing, at some point we need to decide, because Linda did put in some suggestions about the bucket, suggesting maybe putting the non-discrimination in a separate bucket, that kind of thing. So I would like to put, however we term it, phase 2, section 2A and 3A, or buckets or whatever for our next agenda, to just make the decisions on those. Does that make sense?
Can we wait till next agenda? Should we make decisions now?
Well, 2A is a pretty heavy duty one.
I'm sorry, say that again?
2A is
Oh,
pretty.
thank you. I thought you said 2-way, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking. Sorry about that.
2A, sorry.
I mean, I kind of know where I stand on these things, but I didn't want to spring that on anybody because that may be,
Yeah.
a little bit much. So,
Well, have we got agreement on 3A, I guess, for starters, starting with easy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other challenge is that, from meeting to meeting, it's hard to predict how many people are gonna be at the meeting. I know next time we have a meeting in 2 weeks, I'm gonna be attending remotely for that meeting. I'll be out of town, but I can call in and participate, by Zoom or whatever variation on that we're using. But I do think that it's, we have to start crunching some of these things.
well, how about tonight that,
we have the buckets
the big
discussion?
chunks, well, yeah, if we want to, I mean, a couple of our buckets are ranked choice voting and, ward structure kind of thing. So I think we could, vote on ranked choice voting, because that's gonna be a big chunk of language if we decide to go for it. And the council structure, at least, if people feel that we're ready to make decisions on that as a group.
Well, we have 2 people absent, that's the problem.
Well, Linda's saying she was gonna be absent next
Yeah.
time, no, I mean, even if she attends remotely, she can't vote,
Oh, that's right, they can't vote,
Yeah.
we can't remotely vote.
so it's a
Well,
question
if you
of-
wanna talk about ranked choice voting first, how do you wanna proceed on that? Do you want people to kind of informally state where they stand and have a discussion about it before we take a motion, or what do you wanna do?
I mean, I personally think it's a good idea. We can take the temperature of the room and then see, is an argument, the
Yeah, I
discussion,
think we should vote.
or is it, easy, So I feel like take the temperature.
Yeah, take the temperature, I think, is a good idea. It's a preliminary.
Okay, who wants to go first?
I'm a proponent of ranked choice voting, and I will say that I spent I can't remember, I think about 30 years in Cincinnati. Cincinnati had it was called proportional representation then. I didn't have it then, but they had it from 1925 to 1955. And so there were 3 movements to try to bring it back. It was it was thrown out by on a race baiting campaign against a black person who would have become the mayor if they had kept proportional representation. And so I have a long history with it. Rob Ritchie, the guy that just retired from the National Coalition for ranked choice voting and proportional representation, stayed at my house for 2 months when we ran the campaign to bring it back. So I have a really long history with it and have been a very strong proponent of it. I felt when I lived in Cincinnati so strongly, I almost felt like it was it was almost like a romantic attachment to this. So I'm very, because I was very passionate in my support for this. So I think it's really, really important. We haven't really plumbed, I so apologize, I didn't have any idea that he wanted me to do the slideshow, but the slideshow gets into that a little bit. It
We
changes.
have that now.
Yeah, I know we have it. It changes.
It's in the Dropbox?
It was emailed.
Yeah, it changes altogether, politics altogether. And it makes politics more, less polarized, less hostile, and it encourages cooperation, and it's just and it also maximizes, I used to say in Cincinnati, it's an elegant barometer, very finely tuned barometer of voter opinion, because when you rank your choices, you might be a Democrat and, I vote for Democrats, but, you don't feel the same way about all Democrats. Some are lousy, some are good, and some are in between, It's like, so nobody feels the same way about everybody from one party. And so, and the reason it hasn't become more popular, or the reason it was thrown out in so many cities, is the party organizations did not like it, because it eliminates the smoke-filled room, the proverbial smoke-filled room, and it also can decrease the amount of money you spend to be elected, because a community leader who gives a lot of his or her time and does a lot of work in the community and is well known, could win without spending a dime, because you say, give me your number one vote. And so it really reduces the amount of money that's spent. So it in some ways it meets the criteria that a lot of it solves a lot of the problems that districts are supposed to solve without any of the downsides. So I think it's just a really, really wonderful system. I'll just give you a historical, the progressive era, as you know, was in the 20s.
I'm sorry, it's 7:13.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll wrap this up.
This was just temperature, not
Yeah, this was
history.
just yes or
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
You're making
Yeah.
the case for it, not telling us if you.
Oh, okay, all right.
Do you want me to go? I don't know. I'm in between. I like the idea. It sounds vote counting more, people being maybe more interested in it, but also that it's gonna be up to the city to explain it and push it and advocate for it. And, can we find our way out of a paper bag right now? I don't know. So that's where I am. It's just like kind of a nice idea. I don't know if it's a timing thing or how much to go down that road. But so.
And I feel let's go for it. It's like it may not go the first time, but if we don't tee it up, we're never gonna get it into the whole kind of thing. So let's write language, propose it to the council, and take it from there.
I'm kind of in the I don't know category. I think I can see it for mayor. But would need to think a little bit more about how I feel in its entirety.
I think it has a lot going for it, and I would say that I'd be a strong supporter of moving in that direction. However, as a commission member, what I want to offer is maybe a little different perspective, and that is that we are making recommendations to a council. All right, in that council, as far as I know, there's one member of 9 that has any interest whatsoever, real interest in ranked choice voting. Others gave lip service to it or didn't say anything or didn't like it. But one of the members actually likes it, a strong proponent of it. Our job is our job, I believe, is to present to the council what we think the council is going to accept, has any chance of accepting and endorsing and moving forward with. My assessment is that ranked choice voting is not yet mature enough in terms of the understanding of our city, our council, to be able to succeed in getting through the council and onto a ballot somewhere. I would like to explore possibilities, if there is any possibility of recommending that an effort be put in place to move in that direction, all right? But I don't think in our circumstances that we have a chance of moving it to the ballot to the voters because our council isn't familiar with it, doesn't understand it, and it's going to have to absorb a lot of other things that we're bringing to them. So because I don't think council's going to accept it and council's going to endorse it to such a large degree, I really think the chances are very, very small. I don't think that our time spent that way is going to be valuable for our commission, for the commission to spend our time that way.
I thought several people said they were open to it. In addition to Jim. I thought Tony and Davida and
I
others said
didn't
they
hear
were
that
open to
one.
that. I know Melody said that, but she's not on Healthland.
So going back to the temperature taking, I'm kind of on the same page with Guy on this. I view our task as a commission as being first and foremost helping to fill in the gaps in the charter concerning the elected mayor. You know, and I think we've learned through our work and through the discussions we had with the people from the committee for the elected mayor that they felt constrained in what they proposed. So they made minimal changes to the charter. I think I came into this process feeling that there probably were some additional things that were needed. And as I've looked at it closer, it's become more and more apparent to me that there are holes that have to be filled. And I feel that's where I think our first priority ought to be to try to fill in the holes. And beyond that, I kind of agree with Guy that I'm not sure that it's a priority for the city at this point, or in the best interest of the city at this point, to spend a lot of time on the ranked choice voting aspect of it, because I think in order for it to be successful as a ballot issue, there's gonna have to be a lot of work done to propose it and educate people about it. And I don't think the city has the bandwidth for it. And as a voter, I'm not sure I want them to spend their bandwidth on that right now. There's so many other things the city needs to pay attention to. I mean, they can't get the ARPA money out the door. So I really don't want to see city officials paying attention to trying to get ranked choice voting adopted right now. I just don't think that's the city's priority.
Well, that's sort of assuming that all these changes are gonna be on this November's ballot, which may not be the
I'm not
case.
suggesting they're gonna be on this November's ballot. I'm just saying as a bigger picture for what the city can do, the city's got a lot of things on their plate. And I'm not sure that I would wanna add to that plate ranked choice voting. That's just my view. Graham?
Yeah, that's interesting. Guy and Linda, I appreciate that perspective on kind of your view of what we're trying to do as a CRC here, because I kind of have a different perspective on that. Like, I feel that I understand the political situation that we've been called into and that we're operating within, but I feel like as Charter Review Committee, our commission, our role is to create the best charter that we can. And like, I think that ultimately council will choose to advance the different buckets or different sections of our amendments that they're gonna choose. But that as a CRC, I think we have a duty to ourselves to create the best charter that we believe in. And so like, I think that the biggest, talking about ranked choice voting in particular, I agree definitely the biggest challenge will be education. I don't think it's impossible to do. It does seem when you get down to it, it's pretty intuitive, but I studied political science in college and studying modern democracies. We found that proportional representation was the best possible form of representative government that you can have, the most democratic form, and ranked choice voting is the closest way that we can get to that, it seems, here in Cleveland Heights. I feel like the part of the stumble that the 2019 CRC made was focusing solely on the mayoral system. Now we're kind of cleaning up because all they did was focus on that one the one issue, right? So I feel like we have, I think taking a broader view of our work is important.
I want to add to that if ranked choice voting gets on the ballot, it's not the city government's job to advocate for that. It's Rank the Vote and other groups that believe in that. We're saying like, oh, the city will have to expend all this thing. No, it's citizens who believe in that issue who are going to have to get out and educate and mobilize people. So I don't think we will be overburdening the city if we convince them that ranked choice voting should be on the ballot. I think once it gets on the ballot, then it's for the advocates of ranked choice voting to turn out the vote and do the education.
Well, I guess since you spoke twice, I would say that I think voters like shiny objects. And if it's just, cleanup that we're advocating and hole filling, they're gonna say, meh, But if there's something really compelling on the, as part of the changes, now again, it's up to city council whether they put those on there, but I think it could have coattails. People could come out and make a vote on something that they otherwise wouldn't really care about, if it's cleanup and hole filling, it just doesn't spark a whole lot of, interest really on the part of voters who have other things that are higher on their priority list.
I think there are a lot of voters in Cleveland Heights who want the cleanup.
Well,
They see the gaps and they want the
Maybe,
cleanup.
yeah,
It's the pothole vote, we're filling potholes in the charter.
yeah, I mean, that
Definitely
could be,
Yeah. I wanna-
but they do like shiny objects.
Yes, yeah. I want to second what Graham said too, and not to, put words in his mouth, but yes, the best charter we can see possible. I really think that's what we want to make of it. And in that sense also, there may not be technically another charter review commission for another 10 years. It's not mandated or
Right.
anything. So it's like in 10 years, don't we want the city to have adopted ranked choice voting? Yes, so it's like time to start is now. And so again, to saying, well, we only want to put out what we think the council will approve, I disagree with that. I think we want to put out the best of our suggestions, the most forward-looking charter we can imagine here and encompass, at the time remaining, and then let the council decide. And possibly, the council will hear from people in the community who say, yeah, we want this, whether or not you understand it at this point, this is where we want the city to go in the future, and then keep on going.
Well, and I think as a voter, if I am told like, oh, this is a cleaned up charter, that feels like a shiny object to me. Like that's something I wanna hear and would go for.
I was almost using the term pejoratively, like something,
Right,
sexy, to make my point, which is ironic, but.
right.
Still,
But it's a yes and situation, right? Like, well, we
Like, yeah,
and other things too.
like cool.
yeah, moving Cleveland Heights into the future.
Yeah. And introducing,
Yes.
da-da-da-da.
Act now, and we will throw in absolutely free, a hybrid council.
and 40 chicks from the,
Yeah. So I don't. That was an interesting temperature survey kind of thing, and I think some people are warming up a little bit in the course of the discussion. I don't know.
Well,
Jonathan,
we seem to have a 4-3 split.
Excuse me.
We seem to have a 4-3 split in terms of people who are excited about it and people who are either not or are on the fence.
See, I got Drew 4 here, or Graham 4.
That's
Me,
the
Steph, and Guy in between, or Guy, no?
No, I would vote, to vote, I say, no, I don't think
Oh,
it is
okay.
something we should undertake as a charter commission.
Okay, and then I've got us on the fence, right? Okay.
so you're a no.
Yes.
And Linda's a no.
No, and then 1, 2, and then 3 yeses.
Can I don't want to open up a whole nother discussion, okay, but I personally think that if there are citizens in the city of Cleveland Heights who want ranked choice voting, that I want to say we or us or whoever it is can take it on as a charter initiative, independent of the Charter Review Commission, have a chance to succeed. I personally don't think it's a favorable thing for something to get presented and then get voted down. All right, that doesn't plant the right seeds. So I'm saying, I think there's a lot of interest in it, and if people really want to get organized and do something about it, we have the means to do that. okay, and I think it could be effective and successful, but I don't think we're gonna succeed if we do it as part of.
I would strongly disagree that if we put it forward and it fails, we're worse off, we're better off. I think University Heights is a good example. They put it up, people are now talking about it. They wouldn't have talked about it had the Charter Review Commission not presented it. And now it became a real thing, despite the fact that it failed.
I thought was it presented?
Yeah,
Am I
it was
getting-
presented.
Was it the words that didn't?
Yeah, the awards were not presented.
Okay, thank you. I had it mixed up for a second, so I was like,
Yeah, so
wow.
it's much more of a real thing now, and I guess that's according, again, along the lines of what Graham said, if we propose the best charter we can, for all these meetings and all this effort, to not propose the best charter we possibly can, I think would be almost a dereliction of duty, because, we've spent an awful lot of time on this stuff,
Yeah.
and if it's just correcting, I just,
I think also the
Loses
public
its luster
input
for
we
me.
got was pretty much in favor of ranked choice voting. I mean, I don't think anybody, that maybe the table monitors can fill me in. I mean, some people said, I don't understand it, but I like it, or I do understand it, or whatever. I don't think there were any strong, no, I'm opposed to ranked choice voting from our public session, which I think, again, is part of our mandate, is what did they ask from us?
I didn't come away from the public meeting feeling like there was a big mandate towards it. I think there were a lot of people who were open-minded about hearing more about it. People who had heard of it didn't really know that much about it. But it wasn't like we had a groundswell of a room full of people saying, make this your top priority. That's not right.
no, I don't think anybody's saying
No, that wasn't the question,
that. Yeah,
And then Stephanie mentioned something interesting. Can you, if we were to go down the ranked choice voting route, could you just do it for mayor, or it's kind of a once you do it, you might as well do it for everybody kind of a thing, because that means the Board of Elections would have to adjust, right? Like, there's no,
you can do it for council as well.
no, I'm saying like, there's no, is there any
Like, can
point to?
we choose
Yeah,
or the other?
yeah, would you wanna just do it for one position, or is it more of a, no, just either everybody as a slate?
So it's just one of the questions that we would have to decide as a.
Well, I mean, yeah, so when Stephanie meant it was.
You're asking like the feasibility of it.
Yeah, like, is this something you, like, you know what,
Is that
if
even
you're
a
gonna
thing?
do it, or by doing that, the Board of Elections still has to do all these other changes and,
Might
that
as well
kind
do
of
it.
stuff, so it doesn't really matter, like, the cat's out of the bag, I don't know how to.
But when
So-
it was in place previously, for instance, in Cincinnati, did it apply to all elected officials?
Well, Cincinnati interestingly had a city manager form of government, so that's why it got tossed out on a race baiting campaign, because people used, the council decided who the mayor was gonna be, and the mayor was usually the top vote getter. The top vote getter was an African-American man in 1955, and
The top vote getter in the ranked choice voting system.
yeah, so I mean, so people voted, they went to the polls and they voted, usually about 30 people
I would
ran
think you'd
for
have
9
to apply
seats.
to every office. I don't think you could pick and choose, but I'm not an expert on this.
You could
No,
do
but I just
either
meant,
or.
what would be the point, like,
Well,
once you open it up and it's possible to do on the ballot, if you did it, like, I mean, you've already
well,
changed things.
2 points. I mean, the public might be more willing to say, yeah, let's try it for mayor, and then we'll see how that works.
Right, they
and
might,
that kind of thing. And the council might be perfectly happy to say, yeah, throw it at the mayor.
yeah, they might be.
It's just like that.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
it's a good percent.
not to be facetious, but again, it's an introduction to something. It's one individual rather than the whole city council kind of thing. It's something people could possibly wrap their heads around.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we could certainly suggest it to the council.
Yeah.
I think that might get a more favorable reception than some others.
Well, just at the risk of further complicating things, just to say, just to put the lay of the land out there is, Rob Ritchie, I think Kyle Herman mentioned, I think at some point he mentioned this publicly, I think that Rob Ritchie suggested that you could even, if you mixed it with districts, you could have 3 at-large districts in the city and use proportional representation to elect people from each of those districts. So so there are different permutations, certainly,
Sure,
not,
yes.
not to make this more complicated than it is.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because when we first started talking about ranked choice voting, I was like, what about wards and districts and
Yeah, you could do both of them together.
hybrid or, yeah.
It does make them.
Yeah, that's why I was saying that this is probably our biggest chunk of language that we would have to hew out of the raw granite. Because if we want to apply it universally, that's, if you look at University Heights, it's like pages and pages of how we do it. But if we decide, for the sake of getting it into people's heads and getting it on the ballot, to propose it just for the mayoral election kind of thing, that's a possible,
Right.
an easier moving it forward kind of thing.
I mean, it's only 4 pages. UH's is only 4 pages.
That's pages and pages to me.
But-
Four
but-
pages about one issue, you know.
Yeah. Well, we wouldn't have to do that. I mean, we
No, I would just take those.
just want,
Sounds so simple.
I would just take theirs.
Yes.
and-
no, but I mean, we could reduce theirs to 4 paragraphs.
Not necessarily.
If you read through it though, it's very, I mean, they.
Probably a reason why it's 4
outline
pages.
every step in the way of how to do ranked choice.
Is there like a citation that you have to do? Or-
We
Sorry.
don't,
You can
it's
steal
not
it.
up to us to tell them
You
how
can
to do it.
plagiarize.
People
don't have to-
plagiarize laws all the time. They're not copyrighted.
This is such a
Oh, it
new
is.
thing for me.
Lawyers plagiarize constantly.
But like I say, you don't have to give them the enabling legislation. We could just say, this is what we recommend. And,
Yeah.
you know, they can take it or leave it.
The,
Are you serious?
But
the more,
I know,
Public
yeah,
sites.
yeah,
the more information we give them, the easier it will be to.
yeah.
It sounds like, without Roland and Greg here, I mean, their votes could be critical on this kind of
Right.
thing now that, I don't know if we can like register votes or just temperatures, because Linda will be gone at the next meeting kind of thing, so, but we know where
Well,
she
we-
stands on it.
Yeah, we know what you're saying.
So I'm
But
saying,
sorry, Linda will be present at the
Yeah.
meeting, will not be able to vote, but she
Correct.
will be present to express her opinion.
correct, yes, yeah. So I did,
I mean, to me, it sounds like, for lack of better term, maybe put a pin in it, take a due temperature, than just trying to rush something right now.
yeah,
That's just my, cause I mean, I don't have anything that magically changed.
yeah. Well, since my team is losing, that's why I want to have it overtime.
You're not.
I gotta
guys
say
are winning.
that like if we postpone this vote to next week and like it turns out that like Linda's an essential vote, I don't think that we should vote with her absent, right? Like, 'cause I just feel like it would be
Well,
most fair, or like, you know, like I just feel like people participating via Zoom should still have their opinions counted, even if we can't technically vote. Like we should postpone it and wait until there's like
Yeah.
But
an
well,
opportunity.
there's only 4 meetings left.
Right, yeah, that's true.
And that's the,
Yeah.
that's what I come back to, so it's like we have to start making.
well, we haven't decided that we're only gonna do 4 meetings.
That's fair too, that is, you are 100% correct.
If at our next meeting, it is, you know, a 50-50 split, knowing that Linda would be voting on one side, I think I would personally feel that we would have to respect that and
Right.
say that we will not pass it kind of thing.
Or
because-
one of us would recuse ourselves and
Exactly.
allow it to fail.
Yeah, because
think
I wouldn't want to toss it to the first meeting in April instead, because then we're really at crunch. But I agree with Graham, it's like Linda's position should be respected, even if she can't vote. We have to say we're gonna count that as, you know, a factor in vote tally. Linda, would you be okay with that?
I appreciate that. I appreciate your considering that. It's very gracious of you. We could probably, you know, look at that as a working proposition here, but do we want to try to do a temperature on the second issue as well?
Just to remind me specifically which one was the second
Yeah.
issue.
That's if we want to change the way we're electing city council.
Gotcha.
the wards.
If we move through it quickly,
I mean, yeah, does anybody wanna start?
I favor the hybrid, 4 wards and 3 at large.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are we taking a temperature on whether we think it's a good idea or not, or are we taking a temperature on, do we think we should bring it to council for consideration?
Do we think we should bring it to council for consideration?
Yeah, like what, should we
Because
do
it
the work?
affects the work.
No, I mean, to say it's a good, ranked choice voting, I might think is a good idea.
No, I understand.
My argument was, it's not something we wanna bring. So
Yeah.
are we saying
Say both,
ward,
say both.
Yeah, it's like I feel like voting temperature. Right? Okay.
Stephanie?
I think I'm leaning towards the hybrid. Yeah.
Do you have any preferences as to how that gets played out?
Not at the moment. I think I really don't. I'm still
Okay.
just leaning because I agree with, I don't know if it was Councilor Petrus who mentioned like not trying to further divide the city, and that always that sticks up for me. So I don't know. I'm just leaning.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay, so I like what the city of Columbus did. But we haven't had a chance to review it, discuss it, it's at large, but it also has a district representation component. So that I think would be very nice to do. In terms of what would be nice to do, I think it's too much, too big, too complicated and all to try to bring it to council this year with the commission. I'm just looking at the time we have left and what I see as the job we have to do. If we do not get that, it's just my assessment.
Okay, I would say that I'm not in favor of a change. I think what we have now works fine and that I'm more concerned about increasing divisiveness by having ward representation. I think that I can understand why in some larger cities it might be important, but I don't think our city is big enough that it really is that important. I think we are in a pretty good place right now in terms of people on council being attentive to needs of various parts of the city. I recognize there's some people would think, and I would agree with them, that there's maybe a backlog of things that need attention in some parts of the city more so than others. But I don't know that we need to have election by wards or a hybrid system in order to address those problems.
Thank you.
Graham?
Yeah, I think that's compelling, Linda. I feel like I'm leaning hybrid. So I do think that would be more democratic, but I kind of feel like I could be swayed. But I'm leaning hybrid with the 4 wards and 3 at large.
Like Stephanie, I'm really on the fence. I think structurally and ideally, it's not. It's good. It's like termalism is solving a problem that, solving the wrong problem or being the wrong solution. I actually do think that proportional representation is the districts of the mind. It's people who, I think it is a much better barometer of voter opinion. And so if we're not going with ranked choice voting, I wouldn't want to go with districts either, because I think it's the problems that people think would be solved by districts are better solved by essentially proportional representation. And so I also agree with Linda that we don't need any more divisiveness in the city than we already have. So and it breaks down along neighborhoods. I mean, I think obviously the stuff around Noble is, we've been neglected low these many years, and so it is sort of a part of the polarization is the geographic polarization and resentments and lots of. So I don't think it gets solved by divide. And certainly the example of Cleveland City Council is just horrific. It's just a horrible specter out there in terms of fiefdoms and everything that's bad about districts is right on display in Cleveland City Council. So I just don't think it's not the best charter we could propose. I love that phrase that you use. It's a sort of a step down from a structure that is supposed to bring out the best in people and ideas.
If I may, there's one thing I just wanted to say is the most compelling argument for me for hybrid is that it decreases the barrier to run for council. Like that it decreases the financial barrier is for me the most compelling thing about it. I just wanted to state that.
So for me, I mean, I'm in the no camp, and the reason for that is it's an interesting idea, but I don't know if all the administrative remedies have been like, is this solving the right problem? Is here, so which I thought was interesting, and actually I'm also concerned with othering, because okay, if you're going to be a ward and it's only going to be 4 of them, who gets to be a ward, and then
Yeah.
it's kind of like okay, those people, like it gets into a weird othering sometimes, and then I mean I know it doesn't fully work like this, but if you have 100% of the pie, they can delegate that out with the budget. They don't need to create wards, they can make priorities without doing this full hard stop for drawing lines. Like you can prioritize and address concerns and just split it up without having to say, oh, I know it's a guaranteed 25% or something like that. Like it feels like there might be other ways before jumping to this. And like I said, it's just, I'm not sure if it's the right problem. So I'm personally a no. So if I may repeat, I got a no for me, a yes for Drew, no, a maybe, but you lean hybrid.
I don't know, I might say maybe.
Guy is a no, Linda's a no, Graham's a maybe, but you lean hybrid. And then Harriet was a lean no.
I'd say I'm a no. I would
Okay.
lean no to low, no, so.
So I mean, if you take that, then there's 4 people here that are saying no, basically. 1 surely positive, and then 2 maybes that are possibly another side. Like if you're leaning no and he's leaning yes, you know what I mean?
Like a solid maybe.
Solid maybe,
Yeah. So does this mean what does this mean to us?
It's good information.
Well, it's a temperature, as you said, it's a
Yeah,
temperature.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway from this is, okay, now the whole hybrid thing is kind of at the bottom of the list in terms of getting language here. Like, we don't need hybrid to show up next week as one of the language pieces. That's how I would take it.
We're pretty lukewarm on it for sure. I would say though that I think a hybrid system would actually reduce the division because people would know what their lanes are. They wouldn't have to be fighting for one neighborhood at the expense of representing, if they were at large, the rest of the kind of thing. It would clarify, the councilors' mandates, I mean, in my experience of seeing that, it's sort of like you learn to make alliances, if I want something for my ward, then I also help get secure funding for this another person's ward. You learn pretty quickly that if you only represent your ward, then you're not going to get very far. And I think this is a lesson that the current council is not learning. So I don't see it as increasing divisiveness. I see it as reducing divisiveness because people have a better definition of who am I representing here, and other people also have representation, and we're all going to kind of figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, potentially that's,
Yes, yeah.
wouldn't necessarily be
On a
true.
good day, yes.
Well, so going back to Graham's point, I mean, I liked your point that
Jonathan or Graham?
I'm sorry, Graham, Jonathan's
Okay.
point, not Graham's point, Jonathan's point that
The minutes are now just forever. It's okay.
I know. That people need to bring language changes, but I guess, I don't know, if we don't know that we're gonna push either one of them, then we wouldn't bring language changes.
Not necessarily, because I mean, let's say I really think, despite what everybody said, that hybrid's your idea. I could submit for the agenda and say, hey, guess what? I'm gonna take university or something, I edited it, here you go, and now we have to vote. Like now we gotta deal with it.
Yeah.
Like that is a way to push it further out of the lukewarm.
And I think I did a search on hybrid, and I think Strongsville or whatever kind of thing is close to proportion kind of thing. They have the hybrid system. And in their charter, it's just like 3 lines, The city shall elect 4 ward councilors and 3 at-large councilors kind of thing. They don't go into the whole how to do it, They just, and there's a map. It's basically just kind of sliced in half kind of thing. So if we wanted to move that forward, that's One, I believe that we don't have to go into a lot of definition. It's
Drew,
going to be.
I'm not immediately calling to my own mind what Strongsville looks like on a map. Is it like rectilinear?
Well, the.
Because we're kind of an amoeba.
Yeah, I know. We would not have, we would have kind of, sort of like Ireland's, provinces kind of thing. Theirs was fairly rectilinear and I think there was some curves. It was quite pretty, really. They had a ward map, but it was just 4, I agree that making, equal wards out of Cleveland Heights would challenge any topographer kind of thing, but that's not our issue. That would have to be up to the administration and the latest census data. But, if we want to propose it, we don't have to tell them how to draw the lines. We just say.
Well, you kind of do though. I mean, I think that the proposal that wasn't the proposal that University Heights made to have a commission?
Yeah, a districting commission.
Which is not necessary if you're having council draw the districts.
Well, right, but the question is then who do you want to have draw the districts? Do you want city council to do it or do you want to have more independent?
Well, we'll be free in June. We'll be free in June.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, there are experts that, I mean,
Yes,
I know,
as a
what's his
whole.
name, he's running for office in North Hempstead. He gets hired to draw
Glassburn.
Glassburn. Chris Glassburn, yes. He's a good friend of mine, I forget his name, but anyway.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember my own name, wow.
Well, what I'm saying is the language would not be nearly as complex as ranked choice voting. We could just say, based on roughly equal demographics from the last census, districts shall be drawn as council shall determine whether they want to hire something new or something.
I don't think it's that simple though, because I think there's a lot, it goes into how you draw them. I think there are voting rights considerations that have to be taken into account.
I think that's what Drew's kind of, is like you can either delegate, like, we're gonna do it and then they're gonna decide, or,
Yeah. I'm not saying the actual districting is simple, but I'm saying the language to recommend it doesn't have to be, and here's how you're gonna do it.
Before we go into action items and potentially public comment, I thought
We have a
that
public comment thing at the end, but we're almost there.
we had one last thing on the agenda that we put into 7B of new business, which was, do we want to extend a extracurricular meeting invitation to any department heads?
Oh, since Mary's here.
Oh, that was,
my
Six,
vote's
eight,
no
three.
for that. I just think there's more than enough language and stuff, and then the concerns I expressed earlier about it's an awkward position for someone that's getting paid,
Mhm.
And that's just my take. It's not a formal vote, but happy to if we need to.
Does anyone think we really should?
Not given the time constraints.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so recognizing that we have a visitor, did you want to say something?
I did not, but thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
All right,
So can I have 2 minutes?
sure.
All right, so in the work plan, item 2B, phase 2, item 2, sub-item A, comment. All right, it talks about the fact that the financial planning, budgeting, financial
Yeah.
process that's in the charter today does not reflect what is being done. And so the question
Right.
is, do we want to do anything about that? With my background, that's someplace which I could probably work pretty easily and pretty effectively, but I don't want to put any time into anything if the group doesn't say we're going to give it attention to.
I thought with regard to I could be wrong, but I thought with regard to things financial that the state had, some of the stuff was moot because the state had.
I think what
State law had
Dee's
sort of-
alluding to is that what's in the charter right now isn't the process necessarily that was followed this year. The process that was followed this year, people seem to like, but it's not quite matching what was in the charter. Now, whether that means the charter needs to be changed, I don't know. But I suppose if you wanted to volunteer to look into that more and talk to some folks about it, I'm fine with that.
we're talking about budgeting, right?
Yep.
Let's use the word
Okay,
budgeting.
okay, so
It's
not- okay,
finance,
so
this is
yeah.
budgeting.
It was bonding, I guess, at the state. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you're right.
No, it's
Bonding.
This is
Sorry,
budgeting,
actually,
and you heard that you heard basically good remarks about this year's budgeting process, which is not the formal budgeting that's in the charter, so we need to know if how we could change the charter if we need to reflect, or if that
I
would
think
be.
it'd be great if
Okay, so,
Yeah, I would
look into that.
okay, thank you. But my only point is that we shouldn't have something in the charter that contradicts what people are doing.
Yeah.
Because that
Yeah.
probably, I don't know, just not a good idea.
Yeah, and I just, it also makes me wonder why the charter goes into such depth, because then that would tie the hands of the admission, you know, it could be a little loose, like do a budget, don't steal. You know?
Just adopt RCV.
10 Commandments of a charter.
But you want that, you know, you want that flexibility.
Half-page charter.
I would be curious if the charter even overdoes it, and it might be a simpler, cleaner, so then they can adapt and take the pieces
That's a
that they
great idea.
liked. So.
Well, I think it'd be great if you,
I have
You're
enough
the
of my
guy,
emotions
you're the
to-
guy.
man.
Well, and I'm happy to take up the gender neutral language. I know a lot was done, but I think I found a couple other pieces. So I can
Where
bring
is that?
kind of a,
Where's
oh, it's 3A, but I just meant in general, like next meeting, I could bring gender neutral, like package it.
If there's anything we missed,
Everything's we missed, or where it's like, oh, this is a toss up kind of a thing.
Is it he, she, or are we just gonna
I
use
would-
they?
He, she, they, I don't,
I could make a suggestion
his
on that.
person.
If you look at the changes that were made by the 2019 commission, they did a really good job of adjusting language to avoid saying he, she,
Yes.
they.
Yeah,
They
that
kind of
was
reworded
nice.
the sentence so that you wouldn't have to use pronouns. So I would recommend that if you can.
Well, and what I was thinking is
Yeah.
taking that and just making it clearer, cleaner.
Yep.
So that it's a quicker review for us and not going line by line, cause
Yeah, I
it's
think
just
you can
an
avoid
overview.
he, she, they.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying just avoiding like persons,
Yes.
And for the record, I wanna mention that gender neutral is not the same as gender inclusive. And I agree with gender neutral. Gender inclusive would be the he, she, they, recognizing that there are more than two gender identities, I think. But I think for the purposes of the charter, gender neutral rather than gender inclusive, just as long as we know that there is a choice there. But for the charter language, I think gender neutral will last longer.
Let me ask you, it looks like they spend quite a bit of time rearranging sentences to
Oh.
take out he, she, they.
A little too
So
much.
does that meet the criteria for gender neutral?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it
But
does.
that would be the goal.
Yeah, but I think Jonathan can
Yeah.
restructure those
Yeah.
sentences because some of them, they practically were standing on their heads to
Right,
overthrow now.
right.
And I just remember reading some he, she's and I don't know
Yeah,
if
no,
that
I-
was in changes or
Yeah,
where that was
yeah.
from, so I was just trying to clarify.
And I thought maybe just
what
a
we were
focused, clean look,
Yeah,
and I can
So
bring
does
that.
that's 3A?
It's one of the items, but again,
3A, yeah.
as Linda mentioned, these aren't exhaustive lists,
Yeah.
so I'm not so obsessed about that particular
Right.
piece,
Well,
but.
I think the temperature is pretty good on the gender neutral, so
Well, that's what and then
Yeah.
just maybe, get it done.
Yes, yeah.
Cause also, I mean, I don't have to look through all pages together.
Now, again, when you've got that done, I don't expect you to print out the whole charter, but it's like just you'll register and we can find it, you can find the text as you've revised it somewhere so that we can individually look at it at some time.
Yeah, or maybe just a list of this section, this
If that's
line,
possible.
or if there's something that's weird, like,
Fantastic,
okay, we would have to change this
Right.
versus everything else.
Well,
Is there any
if it
places
has
where-
to be in there, we should put he, she, they. If we have to use pronouns,
Yes.
we should use
yeah.
he, she, they.
But
I think
Do
just
we
they
agree
would
with
be
that?
sufficient.
Yeah,
I think
the they.
he likes he, she, they is too much, but
They.
they just gets the job done.
People who get weirded out about agreement of subject and verb.
Yeah, well,
Language changes.
yeah.
Actually, they can be as used in a singular.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And they is us, as is
So-
they is us.
Teacher,
let me ask
they, guys, lesson.
before we run out of time here, let me ask a question about how you want to proceed with respect to finishing up the process of reviewing the charter. And I just want to address the question of, do we want to try to schedule some extra meetings? Because I don't know what you all think. I mean, do any of you think it's possible in 4 remaining meetings of 2 hours each that we're going to be able to finish this?
I don't.
I think we have 5 meetings remaining before.
I'm just counting March and April
Oh, okay.
because we really have to be done by the end of April because we've got to have a meeting with the public and we got to get stuff finalized to go to council and we can string out a few extra meetings now or we're going to have a whole lot crunched in at the end, and I think the process will benefit more if we front load getting the work done.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But I'm open to suggestions.
Well, with all due respect to Stephanie, whose opinion I really appreciate on this, I don't see how we can do our work in just 4 more meetings. I just don't see it. I really don't.
I mean, did we, was it mentioned earlier about people taking sections, like, I'm just thinking of Guy offering to take an area to like look over. Can not trying to volunteer people, but if we all took a section
Yeah, good.
So,
and then brought it back to review.
and so tying in with that, what I was thinking is maybe next meeting is the barometer or whatever, and like, you know, let's say we bring the gender neutral and the finance or budget, and maybe like 1 or 2 others. I know definitely the powers, the right of inquiry, that kind of thing. We can see how it goes, and if we think that that's gonna be sufficient enough, because I don't think we need to go back through like we did with 2019,
No.
start to finish and go through the thing.
Yeah.
And that's my personal opinion.
I think what would make sense to me is whether it's Linda, whoever sends out an email, like these are the topics. Sign up for which one you want. And that we take the section, we look at it, and we bring it back, and that's how we schedule our meetings. So that we go through each thing that we're bringing, we can put it up there and go through it. That would be a process in my mind.
Well, Linda, as I know it isn't what's the word? The ideal, but it seems to me that if we try to fit into this schedule of 4 meetings, or maybe adding maybe just 1 more, when it comes to the end, I mean, we won't have a choice. So I mean, we just have to do it at the end. If we,
By all means, schedule extra meetings. I can't promise that I can be at all of them.
And I think you mentioned a fair point, it's that was, yeah.
That's where I've always stood, so, yeah.
And I think the extra meetings have to be about this work. You know, if we get that done and we still wanted to have extra meetings to talk to people or this or that sort of thing, that's fine. But any extra meeting has to be devoted to working on our product, our presentation to the council, I believe. And just to say that this is, you know, those of us who can will, but we know what we're meeting for to do this work.
I feel like I wanna bring up the idea of like a Saturday extended meeting, like full day, as maybe like a backstop, right? Like if we don't get things done in the time that we have allotted, ideally we do, but like if not, then we have like a time blocked out where everything else can be done. I don't know, how do people feel about that kind of a lock-in type situation?
Well, I mean, that goes back to what Linda mentioned from her experience, that a good way to go through a document is just to
All at once.
literally go through the document.
Until we
Yeah.
have a pope, we just stay in the Sistine Chapel and
Here's the white smoke.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I was
Which will be us burning all of this.
And what I was wondering kind of out loud was, if people now volunteered to take a couple pieces, like you've already done the right of inquiry, budget, gender neutral, and maybe 1 or 2 others, what have you. And then come next meeting, look at those pieces. One, we'll see if we can follow through. And I'm including myself here, you know, because
Yeah.
I have a job and stuff. And
Let
then,
me try mapping it out and seeing what kind of chunks we could come up with and throw out a sign-up sheet and see how many people express an interest in doing enough chunks that we can tackle it that way.
Well, I'll do the non-discrimination again, because I did it once and I'll do it again. I'm just using the University Heights kind of thing, so happy to bring that language forward again.
so
Well,
then,
yours is already done, Drew.
Yeah, that's why I'm volunteering
but we just
for
need
it.
to, we'll need to vote on it, that's all.
Not a dummy,
Drew, if you
despite
wanna
appearances, yes.
propose that language, I can find a place for it in the charter,
And where it would
and
make
if you're
sense.
using exactly
Yes.
University
Yeah,
Heights.
I think so, and I'm not sure if there's any changes, but it's like, let's start with that and then we can work that. Great, thank you. Lynn.
Don't we have in Cleveland Heights some kind of a non-discrimination ordinance or resolution now?
I think so, I'll have to find it.
Do you know if it's different from University Heights?
I'm sure it is. I don't know exactly.
Wouldn't we start with what we have?
You know, we've had this discussion previously. If it's not in the charter, it's not in the charter.
No, but I mean, if we have it in some form, and what you're proposing is to put it in the charter,
Yeah.
but all I'm suggesting is we should look at what we have
Sure.
in Cleveland Heights before we take something from another jurisdiction,
Sure.
that's all.
I've got action items.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of action.
Yeah,
Before, Linda, I think you still have approval of the minutes of January 24th on the agenda. You voted on that
no, she
We
didn't.
voted on
We voted on
We
it.
didn't.
at the beginning.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
after we did February,
We slipped it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody loves them.
Not gonna-
Our favorites.
Okay, so next meeting we'll have feedback from the law department on those questions,
maybe.
yes, that Lee will send around to us beforehand. We can review the balance of power proposal that we didn't get to today. Guy's gonna look into the budget, Jonathan's looking into the gender neutral language, Drew the non-discrimination statement. And is there anything else? Linda's gonna look into potential locks.
Sign up sheets for homework assignments.
Sign up sheets for.
Well, I would commit to still making our CV look simple, to bring back, simple and easy to, I could do that. In a continuing effort.
And then also, I
way.
feel like when we talk, have in mind the next meeting, there's that, did we actually do it and where are we and is it looking like, okay, we're just gonna have to.
Yeah, I think we agreed on that as our process. It's like when we make changes, you know, when we propose changes, we will vote to accept them or not, and then they will be recorded in the document and we'll keep doing that.
We also may end up voting on some of these buckets that we discussed that we took the temperature on today. Next meeting.
Yeah, I kind of, do we have a review, let's see, what is, do we have our opinions about the meeting, lessons learned? I wish we had done the bucket decision because we've been talking as if we're gonna do buckets all along without saying we're gonna do buckets. So I guess in lessons learned, I wish we had voted on that and especially given our later discussion about how little time we have left.
Well, we should put that on.
It's the same amount of work. If you were gonna present one big amendment, or you're gonna present the amendment plus the buckets, when you prepare the whole document, you're already preparing the buckets. I mean, there's some work involved in pulling it out, but it's formatting, word processing work, it's not thinking work.
I think though this is a process question again. Do we want to make sure that we all agree on what the buckets are so that when we fill out.
Yeah, I think it's,
That's a different question, deciding what the buckets are is different.
Well, I think that was Harriet's question.
Is that your point?
We decided.
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, if we're gonna have them and what are the buckets?
Right. So I'd like to get that on the next meeting agenda.
Yeah, I would like us to make a decision on that. 'Cause just for the simple reason that we
Sure.
talk as if we have them, but we have never,
They're all imaginary buckets up at this point. Kind of thing. And we do have some basic ideas, but we need to say, okay, definitely. Some of our smaller buckets now are buckets into the line.
right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Thanks again.
Aye.
Oh, here are the minutes. I
Thank
didn't
you.
see these. I didn't know it's early as January 24th.
Okay, thank you all very much.